Hello everyone, Flik here and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Battle Report. 1500 points of Tyranids versus 1500 points of Death Guard. And I'm zoomed into this because isn't this amazing? This is a bespoke Nurgle themed wood carving I got from the Ukraine. I think it was the Ukraine, I've forgotten now. Either way, isn't it awesome looking? So that's taking a centerpiece of the table today. We've already rolled up for deployment, mission, etc. But first we'll look at the armies. You should be familiar with the Tyranid army, it's the incumbent army. The victors from last time, but we'll go over it again just in case you didn't catch that one or weren't reminded, because it has been a little while between missions. Some Batman miniature game matches took priority, but now I can do those separately, so we'll take a look at the table proper once we've had a look at the lists. So here we have 1500 points of Death Guard, and this is a battalion being led by a Lord of Contagion. I think he has the Fulgurous Helm or whatever it's called as far as the special gear goes. Then we have a Malignant Plaguecaster who has Plague Wind and Putrescent Vitality, along with Smite as is normal for Psychers. We have a 5-man Death Shroud Terminator squad as they come, so the Scythes and the Spewing Hand Flamers. They don't spew flames, they spew goo, but rule-wise they're essentially flamers. Then sadly not 7 Plague Marines, but we have 9 Plague Marines, stock as they come, so no special gear at all, filling out one of the required troop slots. We have 2 10-man Poxwalker squads for objective setting. We have a Fetid Bloat Drone and a Malignant Blight Hauler, I think. We might be confusing that with the name of the Mortar one. These names, these copyrightable names. But those are the other two kind of heavy choices. It's the one with the melta gun and the missile launcher. Now, maybe thinking that's not very many models for 1500 points, and you would be right, because there's also an auxiliary super heavy detachment attached to this battalion, in the form of Mr. Mortarion, who I've had sitting waiting to paint for a long time. It was very intimidating taking this on because it's such a wonderful looking model. He is finally completed. He takes up almost just like 10 or 20 points less than a third of the 1500 points. He is very expensive. I also understand on the table he's a gigantic bullet magnet. Everyone wants to shoot him off the table before he can get close to do anything. With good reason. So it's probably just as well that the Tyranid army does not have very, well, I guess it's got, the Gaunts have guns, but other than that, there's not really any effective weaponry on their side because they're close combat. So this might be Mortarion's best chance to really shine and show what he can do in an ideal combat scenario, because he's not going to get shot off the table before he gets to swing at full strength, ideally. So yeah, he is the Warlord. The Lord of Contagion will probably be dropping down with the Death Shrouds mid-match, but this is Mortarion's time to shine. Let's go take a quick look at the Tyranid army that's on from last time. So a little bit of an awkward angle here, but this is the Tyranid army from last time, being led by the Swarm Lord and Brood Lord. This is a battalion as well. Death Leaper is in the back there too. Then we have the Tyrant / Hive Guard. I always get them confused which is which, but it's the bodyguards for the Swarm Lord, so you can march up the table largely unharassed. 3 Zonothrope Brood, the Horror Specs in all his glory despite his stat line. We then have 3 Tyranid Warriors, Scything Talons and Devourers, except the main one which has a Venom Cannon. We have 10 Gene Stealers, we have, I think it's 17 Gaunts, I don't want to sit and count them, I think it's 16 or 17. We also have a Trigon Prime. The Gene Stealers are going to be in the burrow with him to pop up in the back line ideally in the late game. And then, relegated to unpainted corners still, we have 2 Thornback Carnifexes with enhanced senses, which improves their ballistic skill to 3. As far as psychic powers, it's just going to mostly be a bunch of Smite and Catalyst where appropriate, or Onslaught. That's about it. It's exactly the same list as last time. I think I covered everything. So now we will, well, I can show you the table we'll be playing on more or less. But we'll be back in a second to go over what mission and deployment we've already rolled for. Via D6 roll, we got Spearhead Assault as our deployment, which is a very awkward one to lay out. You go from the center point, and then the tip of each deployment is 9 inches back. So that means we're only starting 18 inches away from each other if we choose to, so that's very beneficial to the Tyranids. And then 12 inches in from each edge here and here, here and here, and then kind of a diagonal point, hence the spearhead. Awkward to set up, we've kind of got it more or less correct anyway. And we rolled a d6 for standard rulebook mission, and we got, whoop, No Mercy, which is just let's kill each other until we're dead, the mission. with the standard victory conditions, where it is 1 victory point for each enemy unit that is entirely destroyed, along with the 3 usual secondary objectives: extra point for killing the warlord, extra point for being the first person to wipe out an entire unit, and extra point if you have a unit in your enemy's deployment zone, which is relatively easy in Spearhead Assault. So that is it. We'll just be doing the 5 turn length that we kind of house roll here because it takes too long otherwise. The blue dice on the table are kind of denoting the Spearhead Assault radius, more or less. But we'll be back with the actual deployment setup for the units, what's deep striking, etc. in a moment. So here we are at deployment, and having no mercy as the mission, in other words no objectives other than kill, is a little bit of a disappointment for the Death Guard side because they had some cheap units for backline objective sitting. The Poxwalkers are essentially just very easy points to give up now, given the objective. So they're kind of just doing backline screening, they're just kind of trying to stop the Trigon Prime burrowing up where it would be very problematic, trying to force him to the sides. Mortarion is right over here, kind of at the side of the spear tip. They didn't want to be too far forwards. The Plague Marines are inhabiting this ruin here, and we've got the drone and the hauler over here. In reserve are the Terminators and the Lord of Contagion. Oh, the Malignant Plaguecaster is right at the back there. So the Tyranid side, they're obviously very eager to get in there, so they're right up to the spear tip. The dice that was over there was the direct center, and you have to go 9 back. So we've got the Horsepecs there, and the Carnifexes backed up by the Tyranid Warriors. The Gaunts are going to kind of throw themselves forwards, take some of the fire ideally because there's so many of them. Backed up by the Guard, the Swarm Lord, and then right in the corner there we've got the Zonothropes and the Broodlord. In reserve they have the Trigon Prime and the Gene Stealers, who are going to follow him up through his burrow, and Death Leaper, who can come in at a later date to go after a character of his choosing. Hopefully he'll do more this time than he did last time, which was just sit on the priority objective. So the Death Guard finished deploying first. They don't want to go first, so they have given first turn to the Tyranid player. There's no seize initiative. We're just moving on to Tyranid turn 1. At the end of turn 1 for Tyranids, which was relatively quick, just forgot to mention that command point wise, both armies have a battalion and both armies are battle forged, so that's 8 command points each for them to spend throughout the battle. This Tyranid army in particular, as you'll know from last time, just really kind of wants to get in there, so they are as they are painted, so they're high fleet Kraken. That means they roll 3 when they try to advance and pick the highest result to add to their standard movement. The Horsepecs advanced quite far up here. The Carnifexes, sorry, the Thornback Carnifexes, they did not advance, they just moved. They're slightly out of range of any of the units over there. The Tyranid Warriors advanced behind them, and then over here, the Guard, the Broodlord, the Swarm Lord, the Zoanthropes, they all advanced, as did the Gaunts, because their shooting's not that effective. They just want to force the fire to come towards them, because otherwise they're just going to lock the Plague Marines in combat until the nasty stuff gets in. Psychic powers wise, the Swarm Lord cast Catalyst on the Gaunts, which means they have a 6+ Feel No Pain for the wounds they're most likely to receive in the next turn. Can't drop anything down on turn 1, so nothing else happened, but they have moved up, they have advanced, the Swarm is coming. The Death Guard don't really have that many guns, because there's so few of them. The Poxwalkers, they're just trying to prevent Trigon burrowing from happening here. That's really all they're going to do for the entire game, which is a great shame. No Mercy is a mixed blessing. Let's move on to Death Guard turn 1. End of Death Guard turn 1. They managed to do a little bit of work on the Tyranid horde that is approaching them. First, as far as psychic powers go, the Malignant Plaguecaster managed to get Putrescent Vitality on the Plague Marines, so they're +1 strength and toughness until the next Death Guard turn. Mortarion, who didn't move up fully because he doesn't want to be charged by the entirety of the Tyranid army, he wants them to spread out a little bit and come forward, ideally. He did hang back. He tried to do Miasma of Pestilence on himself and failed, including a command point reroll of one of the dice, so they're 1 down. Forgot to mention the Tyranids used 1 to make sure Catalyst went off. Not that Catalyst saved them from what happened next, when Mortarion also cast Curse of the Leper on the Gaunts. They didn't get a single Catalyst save on them. Also, the Plague Marines shot into them. The ones that are right at the front were able to double tap thanks to the Death Guard roll that gives them an 18-inch to double tap with their rapid fire bolt guns. So in total, The Gaunts lost 2, 4, 6, 7 of them. I think that's about half. 2, 4, 6, 7, almost half. There's 8 left. They're fearless because they're in synapse range, but they did lose almost half their unit. In terms of anything else that happened, the Bloat Drone moved close enough to use both its Plague Spears on the horror specs and did 1 wound. It's tough to get through toughness 8. So he's down to 12 remaining. The Blight Hauler shot his multi-melter, shot his rocket launcher, or crack missile, whichever. Wounded with both, but hit with both, but failed the wound rolls again. So the horror specs only lost 1 wound, which I think he can regenerate. So really the only damage that was done is the Gaunts, and they don't take morale while they're in synapse. So there's nothing else for the Death Guard to do, but wait and see how the Tyranids react at the start of their turn 2. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. End of Tyranids turn 2, and a lot of the back line just moved up as best it could. The Tyranid warriors advanced. The Carnifexes did not, which allowed one of them to shoot. He shot into the Blight Hauler and did nothing. He got 3 wounds actually. Well, yeah, he got 3 wounds, 3 failed saves, 3 successful, disgustingly resilient. Very good result. So he's totally fine. The horror specs charged into the Bloat Drone. Sorry, quickly corrected the dice down here because they were not correct. The horror specs charged into the Plague Drone, took 1 wound as he went in via Overwatch. In combat, he got 1 wound through, I think, on the Plague Drone, and through Disgustingly Resilient as well, putting it on 9 wounds. In return, it struck back and did yet another wound, so the horror specs is down to 10, but still fighting fit. They're locked in combat. Oh, well, the Bloat Drone has fly, so it can leave if it wishes. But yes, that was one of the combats, the main combats that happened this turn. Oh, totally didn't go over the psychic phase. The Zoanthropes positioned themselves such that they were within range to do Smite on Mortarion. Mortarion is very good at denying. He can deny 3, even though he can only cast 2. He did have to use a command point to guarantee the deny, but he got the deny. He also denied Catalyst being cast by the Swarm Lord, with a good roll on that beat theirs by a long shot. That was all that happened. So essentially nothing happened in the Psychic phase thanks to Mortarion being within range to cancel the effects. Anyway, the main combat that happened is over there. As you'll notice, it did not go well. The Gaunts were going to get shot off the table anyway, so they thought why not try and tar pit Mortarion a little bit, let people get into position for next turn. Mortarion's Host of Plague rolls means at the start of the fight phase, before any blows are struck, anything within 7 inches has a chance, based on his Host of Plague roll, to take D3 mortal wounds. The Gaunts took 3 mortal wounds, leaving them with 6 left to actually take swings at Mortarion. They didn't do anything to him. In return, he used his scythe. Silence, is it called? Or is that the pistol? No, the lantern is the pistol. Silence is the scythe. It has 2 profiles, one for dealing with hordes and one for dealing with tough stuff. He used the one for dealing with hordes, did like 13 wounds. There was nothing they could do. They are wiped out. That is first blood for the Death Guard. Perhaps unexpected. Perhaps expected, rather, based on the Gaunts just kind of trying to draw fire. So it's their turn next, so we'll see if the Death Guard continue with this advantage, because next turn basically all the Tyranid army, other than what's not in the field yet, is in range to charge, so they need to do a lot of damage, otherwise this is going to turn around real quick. End of Death Guard turn 2, and this was a turn where Mortarion really started to shine. A lot happened over this end of the table. Just to quickly cover things, basically the Blight Hauler was the only thing to move. He moved up into the little ruin there to take some shots at the Carnifex. He did so, did very well. He used his Melta, his Rocket Launcher and his Bio Spurt and got it down to 3 wounds, the closest one. Also, remembering this time, the Carnifexes have to, well, the Thornbacks, they have to deploy together, but after that they count as separate units, so they give up 1 victory point each for no mercy. Other than that, well, I guess while we're looking over here, the Blight Drone did 1 wound to the Horror Specs. The Horror Specs did much better with his Shoveling Claws this round and got the Bloat Drone down to 6 wounds remaining. I think that brackets him, so he's fighting it less now. I'll double check for the next turn. But anyway, the main event. Oh, Psychic Powers wise, no Psychic Powers went off because of denies being successful on the Tyranid side, so nothing to cover there. Oh, actually, just very quickly, the Deathstrike Terminators and Lord of Contagion have dropped down behind the Tyranid Warriors. They have to be 9 inches away, and their Spear Gauntlets, or whatever they're called, are 6 inches range. They can't move, so they couldn't do anything, but hopefully next turn, as long as they can survive the fire from the Tyranid Warriors, they can do some damage. Anyway, Mortarion was here. He can fly because he has wings. He hopped over here, and his goal, given that the Broodlord was the closest target, was to soften him up, kill him, and then move on. Underestimated his power a little bit. Also used 3 command points for Nurgle's Rot, which it's a 50-50 chance of doing D3 mortal wounds to every unit within 7 inches. Once per game you're allowed to use that, so that's it done. The Death Guard have 3 command points left. That did 3 wounds to the Broodlord. Didn't do anything to the Guard or the Swarmlord. Put him on half. Mortarion in the shooting phase threw his 2d6 Phosphex bombs at the Broodlord and killed him, which was going to be his charge target, so he didn't need to go after him anymore. As far as the Tyrant Guard go, the Plague Marine shot into them, softened one up by dealing 1 wound to the one over there. It didn't matter though. Mortarion charged, he used his Reaping Scythe profile again, or whatever it's called, the one where he gets even more attacks, and he absolutely destroyed the Tyrant Guard. They did not get a chance to hit back. Oh, I'll need to double check if they have the Death Throws rule. I don't think they do, but we'll double check, and if it matters we'll do a quick addendum. But yeah, they're done. He could have consolidated, but I believe as far as the rules work, and by all means tell me if this is wrong, if he had consolidated into base to base with the Swarmlord, they would then count as combat. He wouldn't be able to attack again, but the Swarmlord would be able to attack him. So he's chosen not to engage to force them to come to him, so at the very least he gets to fire Overwatch. If that's not right, that was done incorrectly. But anyway, big losses for the Tyranids there. They lost their Tyrant Guard for another point. They lost one of their HQs, the Broodlord, for another point. They've still got a lot of CP left over, and the Death Guard do not. They also have a lot of backup that can arrive, and it's going to need to make a difference. So we're going to move into Tyranids turn 3. At the end of Tyranids turn 3, also there's a bin lorry outside you might be able to hear. That was an interesting turn, a lot of stuff happened. You might think at the end of turn 2 it looked like the Tyranids were just doomed. I think this turn might make things a little bit more in the air, let's say. So the Trigon Prime arrived, opted to pop up down there with the Gene Stealers following him through his burrow. You can't charge this turn because he was out of range of anything that was important. He shot his electric spines into the Plague Marines and killed 1. Death Leaper popped up roughly here-ish, and he can reroll his charge attempt on the turn in which he arrived, so he basically just did a, that was Sora barking, just did a nice hop over there and engaged the Poxwalkers, killed 2 of them only, which is a little disappointing. Also disappointing, they dealt 1 wound back to him, so it's down to 5 wounds remaining. In terms of shooting, both Carnifexes shot into the Plague Marines did very, very well. Killed 4. Yes, because 1 had been killed by the electro spines of the Trigon. Killed 4, they are dead, just they're down there. They then charged the Hauler. Didn't do very well against them. Their Thornback charge did nothing. Then in combat they couldn't crack him. In return it managed to do 1 wound. Actually I think that might have been on the way in that the 1 wound was dealt. We did it to the Carnifex, it was wounded. Actually no, it was in combat because this one charged first to avoid the wounded one being attacked. Either way, the wounded one received his attacks in close combat and is down to 2 wounds remaining. Over here, the Horror-Specs devoured the Bloat Drone. It is defeated. His Shoveling Claws got through the armour finally and just... he ate him. He ate him. In fact, I think because he defeated them with the Shoveling Claws, that means he regains a wound. I always forget the Horror-Specs rules because as awesome as the model is, he very rarely gets to do anything. So he might have +1 wound. We'll double check that in a second. Then this end of the table, the Zone Tropes backed up and cast Smite on the Death Shroud Terminators, but the spell didn't go off because Mortarion was in range to deny. The Tyranid Warriors turned around, shot into the Death Shroud Terminators, did 1 wound to 1 Terminator, and then charged in. They killed 1 Terminator on the charge. I forgot how effective the Death Shroud Terminators are, I guess, because they're pretty beefy. If they get the chance to get into combat, they utterly annihilated the Tyranid Warriors. They are gone. They're wiped out. So that is another point to the Death Guard rather, and another point at the end of the game if they choose to stay in the enemy deployment zone. So now the fight that matters: the Swarmlord versus Mortarion. Swarmlord charged him. Did pretty well on the charge, got him down to 15 wounds from the 18 he starts with. Mortarion in return got a lot of damage through, but the 3+ invulnerable the Swarmlord has in close combat saved him terrifically. Stopped a lot of damage getting through from the eviscerating blow scythe attack. Also, Host of Plagues did not go off this turn. The Tyranids then opted to use, you may remember this particular stratagem from last time, Adrenaline Surge. It costs 3, and it means at the end of the fight phase, someone who fought can fight again. The Swarmlord fought again, got a mortal wound through and then a normal wound, and no, it must have been 2 normal, 1 mortal. He does a mortal on every wound roll of a 6. And got Mortarion down to 12 runes remaining. He's not bracketed yet, but the Swarmlord not only just like held his own in that combat, but dished out a lot of damage with thanks to the Adrenaline Surge stratagem. Tyranids are down to 4 command points remaining. Death Guard still have 3. And we're now moving on to Death Guard's turn 3 to see what they can do to retaliate. There wasn't much moving to be done in Death Guard turn 3 as we get prepped for turn 4. The Death Shroud and the Lord of Contagion moved up a little bit towards the zone tropes. They did not do well with their advance. They're wearing Cataphractory, or whatever the armour is called, the Terminator armour for Death Guard, where they have the half advance rolls. They did not get very far. It's such that they couldn't even use their Biospurt gauntlets, so they're very, very slowly moving towards the zone tropes. In terms of movement, that was basically it. The Plague Marine shuffled a little bit up there, or some of them did anyway, not all of them. So did the Malignant Plague Caster so that he could cast Smite. He cast it on the Gene Stealers and got a Super Smite, which was not denied, because there was nothing in deny range, I think. And did 6 wounds, so just outright splatted 6 Gene Stealers with mortal wounds. Trigon Prime is a Synapse creature, so they don't flee. They're just standing there. But that was pretty horrific, losing half their numbers from a Super Smite. Usually it would have just been 3 max. Over here, the combat with Death Leaper. The Plague Zombies lost 2 to Death Leaper's attacks, but they did pretty well. And managed to do 2 more wounds to Death Leaper and get him down to 3 remaining. Death Leaper is not as good as I was expecting him to be. Oh, the Plague Zombies over there just kind of shuffled back a little bit because they're very, very scared. Oh, in terms of combat, the Blight Hauler took damage down to 5 wounds. He did 1 more wound to the wounded Carnifex, or sorry, Thornback Carnifex. And that was it. That fight is ongoing. They're both still trying to kill them. The Thornback's not able to quite crack the Blight Hauler's armour. The Horsepex might be joining them next turn, I'm not sure. But anyway, the main event, this time, Mortarion obviously wanting to go first and swinging his eviscerating blows with silence. He did much better this time. The 3+ were not there to protect the Swarmlord. As such, he was put down to 2 wounds. I think that means he took 10? I think it was 10, yeah. So he took 10 wounds from Mortarion's attacks, putting him in his lowest bracket. He still has 4 attacks in his lowest bracket, which isn't terrible. Strength went down a bit as well, though. He did nothing to Mortarion in return. Didn't seem worth using the remaining command points to try and attack again with him on his lowest bracket. So the fight is ongoing, but the Swarmlord is now in a lot of danger compared to Mortarion, who needs to drop down to 8 wounds to go down to his middle bracket. As far as victory points, nothing was wiped out entirely by the Death Guard there. They were just kind of clinging on. But now we're going to go to the top of turn 4 for the Tyranids and see what happens. End of the penultimate turn for the Tyranid side. Over here, the Gene Stealers and Trigon Prime moved in to help out Death Leaper just to deal with the pesky zombies that were being surprisingly effective at wounding him. You mess with Death Leaper, he calls his nasty cousin, as it turns out. Prior to that, he shot his electric containment spines into the Plague Marines, killed 1 of them. Joined them. I mean, the Gene Stealers could have just handled it themselves. Trigon Prime was just a guarantee because he couldn't make a charge against anything else effectively. Poxwalkers wiped out with ease. Death Leaper didn't even have to do his attacks. They didn't get a chance to fight back because the things that charged took them out. Over here, though, a bit less pleasing for the Tyranids. Horsepex did indeed join the fight against the Blight Hauler. He's only toughness 7 with a 3+ save and then the disgustingly resilient. He managed to withstand all of that. He took a wound, but he's not dead. And he doesn't have brackets, so he's fine. He's holding them all. He didn't hurt them in return. He was trying to kill that Carnifex for a point, didn't manage it, but it's amazing that he, and probably isn't something that should be possible, that he is withstanding 2 Thornbacks and 1 Horspex this effectively. He's probably going to die next turn. He should have died this turn, but didn't, amazingly. Over this end of the table, the Zoanthropes moved back ever so slightly just to tease the Death Shrouds. They did Smite in the Psychic phase, Mortarion was not able to deny them, and they did 3 wounds with their Smite, killed 1 Death Shroud outright, and dealt 1 wound to a survivor. So they're losing people just as a result of being slow and the Psychic powers being able to be cast. Speaking of Psychic powers, the Swarmlord successfully cast Catalyst on himself, so that gave him a Feel No Pain roll, essentially, equivalent of Discussingly Resilient. However, it didn't matter, because no blows were swung between the Swarmlord and Mortarion in this turn. Host of Plagues went off, which is anything either in base to base or within 7 inches of Mortarion at the start of the fight phase. Take D3 mortal wounds on a... well, it starts as a 4+, and then as he drops brackets it goes to a 5+ and a 6+. Didn't get it last turn, got it this turn, did the 3 mortal wounds required to kill the Swarmlord. That is a point for killing a unit, and a point for it being the Warlord. So Mortarion is now free. They basically have utter dominance over this side of the table. This side of the table though, the Tyranids have total dominance. Yes, there's 3 units locked up against a tank that should have died ages ago, but they don't really have anything that can stop Deathleaper, the Trigon, and well, maybe the Gene Stealers could get wiped out for a point. But they've got the backline of the Death Guard's deployments more or less on lockdown. So had Mortarion not been here, I feel like this would have been a very different outcome. Either way, let's see how Death Guard turn 4 plays out. End of Death Guard turn 4, and we'll start over here. These zombies advance as much as zombies can, kind of sideways and away, almost as if they're trying to flee from some form of danger. In the Psychic phase, the Malignant Plaguecaster used Plague Wind and Smite. I forget which, but on one of them he got a 7, which activates his special rule where the nearest enemy model within 14 inches, I believe it is, takes a mortal wound. So although he did not use any of his Psychic powers on the Trigon Prime, it was moderately closer, therefore it took a wound and is down to 11 wounds remaining. He used both on the Gene Stealers in order to try and remove them. He killed 4 of the 5, and then the final one was taken out by the Plague Marines. The Gene Stealers are gone. Deathleaper is fine, and so is the Trigon though, so they can move in. Over here, this embarrassing combat continued in just a staggering number of 6s being rolled for the Blight Hauler, Malefic Blight Hauler, yeah. The Horsebacks and the 2 Thornbacks just couldn't crack him again. He couldn't do anything back to them, but he just is withstanding an absurd amount of combat. Hello, Nurgle. Over here, the Lord of Contagion opted to pull back into the enemy's deployment just to secure Linebreaker going into the final turn, trying to hide over there. The remaining Death Shroud Terminators moved up. 2 out of the 3 were within range to use their spurts on the Zoanthropes, did nothing to them. Mortarion threw Phosphex bombs at them, did 1 wound to one of them, then flew in. They've got a 3+ invulnerable as well, so they survived better than you would think. In the end, he outright killed the one that had been wounded by the bombs, and has 2 wounds remaining on another one. They're fearless though, and in return they were unable to get through to him with their teeth and claws. So now we're going to move into the very quick final turn for both sides and see what happens. At the end of the Tyranids' final turn for this game, they scrambled to get some last minute victory points and succeeded. The Trigon used its electric containment spines on the Poxwalkers that were fleeing, managed to kill 2, 4, 6, 7 of them, which is pretty good. Left 3 of them alive though, so they're not going to give up a point. They then charged the Plague Marines, as did Deathleaper. He tried to use his flesh hooks on the way in, but didn't do anything. In combat, these 2 very easily murderized the Plague Marines before they even got a chance to swing, so they are gone. That's another point given up there. The Malignant Plaguecaster is wetting himself. Over here, finally, the Horspex was able to do, I think it was like 4 wounds, it only needed to do 2, to the Blight Hauler and destroy it. But little did they know that revealed a trap card, because Putrid Detonation was used, guaranteeing an explosion, which does 1 mortal wound everything within 7 inches for when this Blight Hauler explodes, which killed the Carnifex on 1 wound, did 1 wound and 1 wound. And in this combat over here, Mortarion easily overpowered the surviving Zoanthropes, killed the two of them, did not take any damage, and he consolidated ever so slightly forwards. So a mixed bag for the Tyranids, but they did manage to score a couple of points, so they've guaranteed themselves more or less a line breaker at the very least. Shame about the Carnifex getting caught in the guaranteed explosion, but that was the plan all along. So now we're moving on to the final turn of the Death Guard, and then we'll tally up the points. Quick addendum, forgot to cover that prior to any of the combat happening in the Psychic phase, these Zoanthropes killed one more Death Shroud Terminator but did not finish off the unit. Real quick, Death Guard, final turn, two things of importance happened. The Malignant Plaguecaster did smite on Death Leaper and took out his remaining 3 wounds, didn't even need to risk going into combat with him, so Death Leaper died. Over here, Mortarion shot the Lantern, which is his plasma pistol, at the Horspex, and you trace a line and do a wound, assuming you hit. Well, you do one hit roll and then a wound roll for every unit that is caught by the line. Carnifex didn't take any damage, the Horspex did, and it's 3 damage, so he's down to 5 wounds. Mortarion then charged the remaining Carnifex, and just to kind of demonstrate the power he has if he's fighting something that doesn't have an invulnerable save, and he negates their save because he used Eviscerating Blow with his scythe, which is strength 16, AP -4 or something like that. That's the damage roll, because it does d6 damage per wound it gets through. So that Carnifex is, well, Thornback Carnifex, is very dead. We'll be back in a second for the final tally. So at the end of that very bloody game, we're here to tally up the points. No Mercy turned out to be a blessing in the end for the Death Guard. They got First Blood, they got Linebreaker, they got Warlord, they killed the Swarm Lord, they killed the Brood Lord, the Gene Stealers, the Zoanthropes, the Tyranid Warriors, both Carnifexes, which count as separate units once they're on the field. Who am I forgetting? Let me see. The Tyrant Guard. I think I mentioned Death Leaper already. So that gives them a total of 11 victory points, I believe. The Tyranids had Linebreaker, they killed the Blight Hauler, the Blight Drone, a squad of Poxwalkers, and the Plague Marines, giving them a total of 5. So 11 plays 5. Remember, the Lord of Contagion is all the way in the back there, giving the Death Guard Linebreaker. And the Trigon Prime is over here giving Linebreaker to the Tyranids. Worth pointing out, if you subtract everything that Mortarion did in this match, the Tyranids would have won. Well, it would have been easier for the Tyranids to win, because instead of taking Mortarion you could take like another squad of Plague Marines, or the Mortar Tank, or more Bloat Drones. But this was his ideal match. Very few guns to shoot him off the table, or at the very least weaken him before he got into combat. He was able to just wreck face against everything. The only things that slowed him down were the Swarm Lord and the Zoanthropes, because they have 3+ invulns, which are very, very good. He destroyed. I'm very, very happy with him. Obviously against the shooty army, it's a little bit harder to say how he would do. He needs to get in there before he gets shot off the table by superior firepower. I think it would have went the Tyranid's way though if he wasn't there and there was just some more standard units, Plague Marines or the things we just spoke about. Because it's very hard for the Death Guard to fend off a lot of monsters that can withstand a lot of strength 4 that they can put out, essentially. Either way, Death Guard win. Hope you enjoyed, thank you very much for watching. There will be more 40k in the future. They're a little bit harder to do than the Batman battle reports, so they're not as frequent. Still preparing a new army for the table as well, that we'll hopefully see very soon, even if most of it is unpainted. I hope you don't mind. But thank you for your support, I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time. Ta-ta for now.